So he comes, he tries to grab your rifle, he's shot. You decide at that point, unless I'm misremembering, you want to go turn yourself into the police.
Yes. After I shoot Mr. Rosenbaum, he tried to grab my gun. I was running away. There was a gunshot behind me. After I shoot him, I run around the car because I was going to go render first aid to him. I wasn't able to because then there was a mob forming and calling for my execution to get him and kill him. And that's when I tried to run to the police line and get to the police. And then I am attacked again.
By the guy who kicked you?
By Jump Kick Man, yes.
Whose identity we didn't know. It turns out the prosecution knew it and hid it.
So we found out November 7th, the prosecution, we went into the judge's chambers and the prosecution said, we identified Jump Kick Man, and the prosecution threw a fit a little bit. They didn't want us to interview him. They were like, well, he's a victim, and didn't want my investigators or my attorneys to interview him or ask him questions. They just wanted to do it private, non-recorded, and the judge said, no, it's going to be recorded. And then a couple hours later, they say, oh, he asked for immunity and we're not going to give it to him, so we're not going to be calling him as a witness.
Yeah, well, probably didn't want to talk about his criminal record.
Yeah.
So you're running, trying to get to the police lines. You see the mob coming after you. Let's execute him, they're saying. And then out of nowhere, you get dropped to the ground by the guy who kicks you in the head. Mm-hmm. Did you see him coming?
I did. To backtrack a little bit, actually, as I'm running, Gage Grosskreutz came up to me with his phone and put it in my face, and he said, what are you doing? Did you just shoot that man? And I told him, I'm going to the police. And he said, oh, okay, and ran off. And I kept running to get to the police. And that's when Anthony Huber strikes me with the skateboard as I'm running before I'm on the ground for the first time. And then I'm hit with a rock by somebody in a white tank top. And that's how I end up on the ground. And I have 4 people around me from what I remember. And I move my firearm in their direction and they back off with their hands up so I don't shoot them. And then Jump Kick Man keeps coming. And that's when I fire 2 shots at Jump Kick Man.
Wow. And you miss him and he kicks you?
Yes.
Then what happens?
After Jump Kick Man is running off, Anthony Huber comes up and he grabs the barrel of my gun and then he hits me with his skateboard holding his trucks, and that's when I shoot him 1 time.
Where did he hit you with the skateboard?
He hit me in the back of the head, in the neck, the back of the head towards the neckline.
Did you think you were going to be killed at that point?
I did.
Then what happens?
And then after Mr. Huber attacks me, Mr. Grosskreutz puts his hands up, and then I have my rifle pointed in his direction for about a second, and then once I lower my rifle, I noticed that my ejection port is opened about an inch, and Mr. Grosskreutz said I pulled the charging handle, which never happened. I hit the forward assist to close the ejection port, and he sees me doing that or something, and this time he runs at me and he has his gun pointed directly at my head.
Did you see the gun?
I did.
What, do you think he was going to shoot you?
I did. He had it pointed directly at my head, and that's when I shoot him 1 time, and he is no longer a threat to me at that point because he ran off after I fired that shot.
Did you realize you hit him?
I didn't know until later.
So then what happens?
There is a person directly in front of me, and I point my rifle in their direction, and he puts his hands up, and he's backing up, and I then turn around, start going to the police, and then I hear shots behind me, and I turn around and briefly raise my rifle to see if I'm being shot at, and then I realize I can't see who's shooting at me, so then I turn around and go back to the police car, towards the police line.
It's just, hearing this, it's just hard to believe this is happening in an American city.
Yeah.
So then you finally get up, you hear shots, you turn to see who's shooting at you, and then you finally make it to the police line.
Yes. once I make it to the police